Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Harrah's Hoosier Park. Michael Chamberlain and Jacob Reinheimer here in the Dan Patch studio. And Jacob, it is that time once again, the first Saturday in May in the offing, and that means it is time for the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, $5 million on the line for
Yeah.
them, and just an incredible betting race this year. So many different ways you can go. I know we were kind of struggling to make our top selections right up until the wire. Just the most compelling betting race here. All eyes, of course, going to be on the morning line favorite from Post 8 Journalism here as he comes in from California with so many unknowns as he jumps into a 20-horse race. And I know we both go different directions for our top selections, so just could not be more excited for this race.
And honestly, I don't have anyone under 15 to 1 in the top four selections here. So the way that this race is going to shape up is it could go one of many different ways. I'll tell you, we can obviously say how we think it's going to happen, but let's take a look at the field for the 151st Kentucky Derby. As Jacob mentioned, the morning line favorite, number 8 Journalism at 3 to 1. Second choice at 5 to 1 is number 18 Sovereignty. Who was the runner-up in the Florida Derby to Tapan Street, who is unfortunately not in the Kentucky Derby this time around. And then the third choice is the 17 Sandman at 6 to 1, who won the Arkansas Derby. After that, there's a couple of 12 to 1 shots with the Wood Memorial winner Rodriguez and the Bluegrass Stakes winner Burnham Square, both at that 12 to 1 figure. So only 3 horses in single digits here, Jacob. And obviously with a 20-horse race, that's kind of the way that we expect that to go.
Yeah, but we kind of talked about it this spring, too, where on the road to the Derby, a lot of these horses failed to kind of separate themselves a little bit. It looked like a very wide open Derby. We mentioned that Journalism in North America, at least, really the only horse that kind of separated himself a little bit, but you're racing against small fields out in California. Other than that, you can kind of poke holes in every horse in this race. It's what makes it so challenging to handicap, and why you mentioned you got nothing but long shots in your top 4. Like, that's why you can do that, because these horses are hard to predict right now.
Yeah, honestly, and the way I think that this is going to play out, you've got Citizen Bull, who is the number 1 horse at the inside, the 2-year-old juvenile champion, I might add here. He's going to go. Neo Equos should go. Rodriguez won the Wood Memorial on front all the way. He could go, but he could also rate a little bit off the pace. American Promise, who won the Virginia Derby, I expect him to go. We know East Avenue is going to go. He was the runner-up to Burnham Square in the Bluegrass, and the horse that drew all the way on the outside, number 20, Owen Almighty. He is expected to go as well because he's won the Tampa Bay Derby in front-running style, and so I just think there's going to be an awful lot of pace in this race.
Yeah, I certainly don't fault you for thinking that way. We talk about it every year in the Derby. Of course, Two Fails a couple of years ago, the fact that he held up the way he did off the Derby pace was incredible to finish second that year. But, it certainly wouldn't surprise me at all. $5 million on the line. You expect a hot opening pace. The only concern there is if the Baffert trainees maybe get lined up on the front end and kind of have things their way, and Owen Almighty can't get into it from the far outside. Does that kind of change the complexion here a little bit? And I think that's a big question mark, is what happens when they get to the first turn.
Exactly. I think that I expect the half to be somewhere between 45 and 46 seconds. I don't expect it to be any slower than that. And again, given track conditions and everything, but from what I understand, Saturday is supposed to be a clear day in Louisville. But, I just think that with all of the speed that we're going to see here, I think this sets up for a cavalry charge at the end where you're going to see a lot of horses come storming up from off the pace, kind of, in a Giacomo or a Mage kind of way of winning the race.
And it's going to be interesting, too, because I know you said Saturday's supposed to be a clear day down there, but I think otherwise they're expecting a lot of rain in the lead-up.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot of moisture in that track. That's going to be something to keep an eye on all week. Does that track get heavy where it sets up better for the closes? That's also something to keep an eye on.
And the one other thing we need to talk about also is the number 21, which we talked about because of Rich Strike a few years ago. Baeza, who was the runner-up to Journalism in the Santa Anita Derby, he did not get into this race unless being an also eligible, so someone has to scratch for him to get in. And the reason is because the Santa Anita Derby only had 5 horses in it. They reduced the points that were given on the Kentucky Derby point standings, and Baeza is on the outside looking in as it stands right now.
Yeah, kind of a victim. Owen Almighty was kind of fence sitting there for a little bit. They
Right.
weren't going to go for a little bit. They were going to go to the
The
Pat
same with
Bay
Render
instead.
Judgment, yes.
Same with them, and then they end up going to the Derby. So Baeza is left out, and he was 12-1 on the morning line. One of those 12-1 shots, I think, was going to be one of the kind of the wise guy horses
Sure.
going into the Derby. Should he draw in? So that's going to be something to keep an eye on, because if he draws in, he's going to take some play.
And you mentioned the Bob Baffert horses as well, coming from California. He is now back in the good graces of Churchill Downs and has returned to the Derby with two horses, the 1 Citizen Bull and the 4 Rodriguez, both of whom I expect to be part of the pace.
Yep.
I did mention if either of them is going to sit back off a little bit, I think expect it to be the 4 Rodriguez, because Citizen Bull from the inside, I just think he has to go.
Yeah, I agree. That's really all we've seen from Citizen Bull to this point, is where he's going to be forwardly placed. And Rodriguez, he's mixed it up a little bit. Actually going to New York, as I said, they put him on the front end. A little bit of a change in pace there after he was chasing Journalism and Citizen Bull in back-to-back starts at Santa Anita. But that's going to be something to keep an eye on there. I think it was also a fairly weak field he was facing in that Wood Memorial, so it's understandable he was put on the engine there. But I agree. I expect both of them to go, especially Bob Baffert's return to the Kentucky Derby. He's going to want to be a factor in this one.
So as we take a look at the selections for the 151st running of the Kentucky Derby, Jacob, you are on number 7 Luxor Cafe, one of the 2 Japanese horses in here, trying to get a couple of noses ahead of where Forever Young finished last year.
They just keep knocking on the door, right? You were big on Dermot Sotogake
Yes,
just a couple
I was.
of years ago. Forever Young, maybe him and Sierra Leone taking each other out in the lane last year. He ends up finishing 3rd. But Luxor Cafe, again, you talk about these North American horses and the holes you can poke in them. I think he's going to offer a lot of value. It's purely an upside bet for Luxor Cafe on my end. I think you're going to get around that 15-1 number. That's what we're seeing in the wagering right now. And he's really done absolutely nothing wrong over in Japan. He actually nosed out at Meyer Daytona, who went on to win the UAE Derby early on and made an action in Japan. He opted to stay in Japan from there, and I think he's been getting better with each and every start. He won at a mile and 1/8. Looked like he could have gone forever in that last start afterwards, too. Only got stronger as the race went on. He's a son of American Pharoah. You like that pedigree when you're coming into the Kentucky Derby. And I really thought him and Journalism were the 2 that I thought were going to win. He's going to offer the much better value, probably a price, 4 to 5 times better than what you're going to get on Journalism. So I think from a value perspective and the upside of Luxor Cafe compared to where you can poke holes in some of the rest of these horses, that's going to be my top selection here.
I think he's got a big shot because I have him 3rd as well, and the reason I think he has a great shot is, as you mentioned, the way he won that last race, the Fukuyoro Stakes in Japan. He ran away from that field, and it looked like he was just going to keep going and going. And I certainly was impressed visually with that win that he had on March 29th over in Japan. The other part of that is, you mentioned the lineage with American Pharoah being the sire. Out of a More Than Ready mare, More Than Ready, one of the many horses I have jinxed by selecting in the Kentucky Derby over the years. But this horse certainly, I think, is a very live candidate to win. My top pick is going to be number 3, Final Gambit, who is 30-1 on the morning line by Not This Time, who is the sire of Epicenter, who ran second to Rich Strike just a few years ago, out of a Tappet mare, which tells me this horse also should run forever. And the last race at Turfway Park, the Jeff Ruby Stakes, he looked like he was going to go around that track again and just continue to pull away from everybody the way he finished that race. Now, he was last, 12th and last early on, ended up running past everybody and drew off to win by over 3 lengths in a time of 1:50 for the mile and 1/8. Now, Final Gambit has not been on a dirt track previously in a race. However, the way he's been working at Churchill Downs, from what everyone is reporting, is he is taking to the dirt surface there. He certainly is seeming to like it. And I think that given the way I see this race setting up, with a very fast early pace and, as I said, a cavalry charge that I expect to be coming at the end of this race, I just think he could run past everyone and light up the tote board. And I just decided that I'm going to go ahead and stick with that plan.
Yeah, no, you've been very confident on this
Yeah,
horse really
for a
for
while now.
about the last week. I did see, in the wagering, we're shooting this on Wednesday afternoon. I think his odds were brought down quite a bit from that 30 to 1. I think a lot of folks getting hot on him. I think it was down around that 14 to 1 number,
I
somewhere
kind
around
of I
there.
kind of get the idea that he is the wise guy horse
Yeah.
this year, which none of us here at the track or my wife for that matter would identify me as a wise guy, but. It's always interesting. There's always that one horse. A couple years ago, it was Two Phils. Horses that people seem to gravitate toward as the week goes on, and I think this is the horse that is going to be that one. And a trainer is Brad Cox. Luan Machado is going to have his first Kentucky Derby mount here. I just think that given all of these parameters that we're talking about, this horse fits in as a logical win candidate, at least in my mind. And I will say the other part of it is that some horses just do better going turf to dirt or artificial to dirt. And I think that you could see a marked improvement in this horse. And if he improves off that last race, I mean, he could win this race, very nicely in a very sharp performance, and I would not be surprised in the least.
Thought it was also encouraging in that Jeff Ruby Stakes. Of course, you can't race on Lasix and stakes races in Kentucky. He was racing on Lasix for 2 starts prior to that.
Right.
Comes off and looked maybe better than ever there. Final Gambit, as I said, getting better with each start. No Lasix here in the Kentucky Derby. And Brad Cox. If you're going to get Brad Cox at a price, that's always something you have to be cognizant
Yes,
of.
absolutely. We mentioned that we both like Luxor Cafe. The other horse we both like in the proceedings here is number 10, Grande. And I will tell you this, I came this close to overturning my love for Final Gambit here to pick Grande on top. John Velasquez riding for Todd Pletcher. Nothing wrong with that set of human connections. By Curlin out of a Warfront mare. Now, Warfront obviously is more of a turf pedigree, having won the Breeders' Cup Mile the year that he was, I believe it was 2000, the year he did that. But was second behind Rodriguez in a race that Rodriguez basically went to the front in the Wood Memorial, slowed everything down, and this horse still closed into that slow pace and made up quite a bit of ground. Only 3 starts, but the 2 of them with Velasquez were both victories. Velasquez was not aboard for the Wood Memorial. Dylan Davis rode in that one, so Velasquez getting back aboard for Todd Pletcher. Grande's 20 to 1 in the morning line, and I think, as you said with Final Gambit, I don't necessarily know if we're going to get 20 to 1. Someone like Steve Christ, the longtime editor of the Daily Racing Forum, he picked Grande as his top pick in an online video that I saw earlier today.
Yeah, and I can't fault him there. This is kind of like Final Gambit and Luxor Cafe. I think there's a lot of upside to picking Grande here. You're going to get some value there. And he's another one where he's just very lightly raced. They kept him out of stakes company until the Wood Memorial. And you could give him a litany of excuses on that race. He was wide in both turns there. And as you said, still putting a run in at the likes of Rodriguez down the stretch there. Rodriguez had things his own way. He was never going to catch him there. I thought some of the excuses were maybe a little over the top for Grande on that day. I don't think he is ever going to beat Rodriguez there, but with the way things are going to set up in this race, he should be in a pretty good position to maybe be a little bit more forwardly placed than the likes of Sovereignty and Sadman, who I think are going to have a lot of horses to pass going into the last turn. I think it's going to be important to have a little bit of a jump on them, and I think he's going to be in a good mid-pack stalking position here, and I think he can set just off the pace and be a factor late.
Now, you did include Journalism, the morning line favorite here, as your second pick, and I certainly can't blame you for that. I mean, the horse does seem to be somewhat of a standout, but we have seen these California horses come in years previously, like Rock Your World, like Taba, that have won those races out there, and even last year, Stronghold. Stronghold was in contention at the top of the stretch and couldn't finish it off. So you have to wonder how that California connection is going to pay here. Now, again, By Curlin out of an Uncle Mo mare, so again, should be able to run forever. But, I just think it's going to be up to Umberto Rispoli to get this horse the right trip.
Yeah, I'm not going to settle for 3 to 1 on top on Journalism here. We're never going to settle for a favorite in the spot, but he's also one where I just could make a case for leaving him out of my business because I think he's going to get a trip similar to like what I said about Grande, where he's going to be kind of in the middle of the field, and unless he's taken out of this early, where he gets pinched early or takes a bad step coming out of the gate, I think he's going to be in a good position turning for home. And again, I think if Sovereignty and Sandman are going to rally here, they're going to have to rally past Journalism, and I think that's going to be tough to do. That's what I I do like about journalism, where a lot of these horses, maybe it's inconsistency or maybe they've just been unproven against stakes company. Journalism's proven the ability is not the question here for journalism. The only question is how he's going to handle a 20-horse field, and that's a question you can ask about every horse in this field. So I have to include him on my super ticket somewhere. I'm that much of a believer in this horse. I think he's more talented than the rest of the North American horses in the spot. It's just a matter of how he's going to handle the big field.
And for the fourth selection for both of us, we each picked a Steve Asmussen horse. Yeah. He's got 2 horses in this race. You picked the one, number 13, Publisher, who is still a maiden after 7 starts, but was second to Sandman in the Arkansas Derby on March 29th.
Yeah, big fan of this horse. And like I said, I think this is just a value to throw underneath. He's certainly gotten better. He's one of those horses that leaves himself an awful lot of work to do. That's what we've seen, whether it be the Arkansas Derby, where he had the rally from 8th to finish 2nd behind Sandman there. Even going back to the Rebel, got away in kind of an impossible spot there, finished 4th, only beaten a little over 3 lengths. So a big field here. I think this is going to be a little bit similar to Final Gambit. He's going to have to navigate some traffic, but I think he could be a factor at a big price. He's really only gotten better, and again, a son of American Pharoah here.
Now, I used the other one, Asmussen horse, the 14, Tiz-tastic, who was the winner of the Louisiana Derby at the Preakness distance of 1 mile and 3/16. And he made a very strong move on the turn in that race to go from 9th of 10 horses to get the lead as the horses were coming into the stretch. Very impressive move around the turn. A horse by Tiz the Law, a Derby runner-up, again, out of the Tappet mare. So Tiz-tastic, again, Steve Asmussen has not won this race yet, but he has had some very strong finishes with Epicenter, with Disarm, who trundled up to be 4th in the year that he was in the Kentucky Derby. So I certainly don't think the Steve Asmussen horses can be dismissed, and I think that's kind of what we were both thinking, you using the one and I using the other.
Yeah, that's totally my mindset there. You have to include the Asmussen horse. It's going to be one of those things where, I mean, just such an incredible career. It's such a glaring hole on his resume, right? That Kentucky Derby. It's just not going to be right if he doesn't get one. I don't know if this is the year he gets it done, but I do expect him to be a factor.
It's like in golf. Sam Snead never won the U.S. Open. Greg Norman never won the Masters. It's kind of that same type of thing where you just look back on the history books and say, wait, he didn't win that? Yep. Even Bjorn Borg with the U.S. Open in tennis, the same thing. He never did. So it's certainly an anomaly that he has not won this race yet, because he has had the horses, not pun intended, to win this race. So I got to believe that it's going to happen one day. I don't necessarily think it's going to be Saturday, but I certainly think he has given himself a couple of possibilities here. Now, as we look at our 4 here, Jacob, is there one other horse that you might want to kick in as a 5th that you've had a little interest in?
Yeah, there were quite a few. I know the other kind of wise guy horse right now is the 5 American Promise. A lot of people are jumping on him for the coach, D. Wayne Lucas. Certainly understand that. I didn't know if I would be able to jump on board. Yeah, he romped in the Virginia Derby, but that Virginia Derby is a little bit of a question mark there.
Yes, that's true.
But again, he seems to be the wise guy horse right now, where again, early on in the wagering, he is taking a lot of play from 30-1 on the morning line.
The one I would include, and is one of the 3 favorites, is number 18, Sovereignty. Yep. I think this horse has got a very large shot here. His win in the Fountain of Youth was very visually impressive for a Derby-type performance. He was off the pace, sat last early on in that race. Again, a field of 6, so not a huge field there. But he was able to circumnavigate the traffic that he did encounter, and then went on to win nicely. Now, granted, River Thames is not a 1.25 mile horse. River Thames is more of a dirt mile horse, so it is certainly remains to be seen with that. And he could not catch Tapan Street in the Florida Derby. Ended up finishing 2nd there, but he did draw the outside post in that race, and the track at Gulfstream, if you're in that position in the outside gate at that particular distance of 1 mile and an 1/8 or 1 mile and a 16th, it's really tough to win from there.
And I think it's really interesting, too, because I think him and Sandman can be a little bit tough to separate. But right now, early in the wager, and Sandman's taking all the play, and there's a lot of value on Sovereignty, which I thought moving forward, I think I like Sandman moving forward more than I like Sovereignty. But for this race, I actually like Sovereignty a lot more. He seems to be a little bit niftier in the middle portions of a race, where he can make some bolder moves, pick off some of them so you don't have to pick up, 10 to 15 of these horses turning for home. because that's why I steered clear of both him and Sandman as someone who picked Sierra Leone and Tapit Trice the last 2 years. I probably should have read the writing on the wall there, where they're just going to have too much work to do and they're going to have a lot of traffic to overcome. That's my concern with both of them, especially drawing to the outside. They have no early gate speed. They're going to have to pass a lot of horses. But I think this weekend, Sovereignty is more live than Sandman, and that's not what the wagering's reflecting.
No, and again, trained by Bill Mott, owned by Godolphin, another
Yep.
entity that has never won the Kentucky Derby. That they want to do that. Bill Mott has won the Kentucky Derby, but did it via disqualification when maximum security was taken down and the Bill Mott trainee Country House was put up top. So I think there's a lot of interesting stories associated with Sovereignty that certainly would be an interesting payoff come Saturday. You mentioned the horses having a lot to do, and obviously my top pick, Final Gambit, having to come from the clouds to win this race. The other thing about one other reason I liked picking him quite a bit here is a lot of the speed that we have talked about drew inside. So he is surrounded by the horses that are going to go. With that, I think he's going to be able to take back position where he wants to be positioned and be able to mount his rally when he can make it once the pace starts to collapse. So I just thought there was quite a bit to like about Final Gambit, and I know that, as you said, the odds are reflecting that a lot of people are agreeing with that too. For Jacob Reinheimer, I'm Michael Chamberlain, wishing the best of luck to you all.